Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're signing in from. Welcome to Orford Mining's Live Investor Summit. I'm pleased to introduce Orford's CEO, David Christie, and Vice President of Exploration, Michelle Sciortino. Today, David and Michelle will take us through a presentation. Afterwards, we'll be accepting questions. As a reminder, you can submit your questions on the chat panel on the right-hand side of the screen at any point during the presentation. We'll get to them as soon as the presentation's wrapped up. As always, the summit is being recorded and will be available on 6.com to watch afterwards. Without further ado, though, I'll hand it over to David and Michelle to kick things off.
Thank you, Romeo, and welcome, everyone. Going to walk you through our presentation here. We are a gold and critical minerals explorer working in Quebec. We have nickel, gold, and lithium properties, and we're going to walk through what we've been doing on those this summer. I will be making some forward-looking statements. Have you read those at your leisure. This presentation will be on our website. First of all, we just completed two financings between May and July. We raised a total of $5.47 million. We're now completely financed for quite a while. And the two financings had both flow-through and hard dollars in them. We now have a market cap of around $34.08 million and 200 million shares outstanding. In that financing, Alamos Gold increased their ownership in the company to 27.88% from 26.18%. We're really grateful to have such a great shareholder on our shareholder registry. Just quickly on our management team, we have a couple of the best geologists in the business with Alger St. Jean and Michelle Sciortino. Michelle will go through much of this presentation. And our board of directors is a very experienced group of people who have been involved in a number of great success stories in the mining world, in the finance world. When you look at our Nunavik area projects, you got to look at it as sort of one big project where we're looking for multiple commodities. We've been there for a while for nickel. We added gold to that when we made the discovery at Kigavik. And now we've added 500 square kilometers of lithium projects to that same region. So we're spending the money where it needs to be spent on each individual project within that overall regional approach. And I think you're going to find that we're doing some really great things up there. I'm going to hand it over to Michelle now to walk you through the advantages we have in the region and what we've been doing. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sure. Thanks, David. As David mentioned, we've been active in the region since 2015, and this is really greenfields exploration. It's untouched. No one's done exploration in the region before us. So if you think about the western side of the Arctic and all the discoveries that have been made there in the last 30 years, that's what we think the potential has in nickel, gold, and lithium in this part of the Arctic. You can go ahead to the next slide. With that, we have a strategic advantage. This is a photo of Camp Chuckatat. It's located about 90 kilometers south of Salouet. In Salouet, we have a storage base and a logistical base, which includes a large reserve of pre-ordered fuel. And as I mentioned, we've been operating greenfield exploration in Nunavik since 2015. So we know how to make things happen. Our 2023 work program includes work on all of our properties. So there is geophysics, mapping, and drilling on Kikavik. That's our gold property. Exploration and prospecting for lithium-bearing pegmatites on the new Nunavik lithium properties, possibly a RAB drill hole as well. We have a drill on site, and geophysics on the high-grade West Raglan nickel-copper PG property. Go ahead to the next one. This is an overview of our lithium properties. These were added to our portfolio last winter. They're shown in red. Previous to that, we had been operating for a couple of seasons the Kikavik gold property and the West Raglan property. So you can see the lithium properties there in the red, both to the north and to the south. Originally, we had staked 450 square kilometers. We recently increased that by 13% to just over 500 square kilometers. And these are 100% map staked by Orford Mining, so no royalties at all, 100% owned by Orford Mining. And these were picked up based on map pegmatites from the government mapping, lake bottom sediments with anomalies for lithium and pathfinder elements in the 90th percentile, but the majority were 98th percentile or higher for Quebec, and anomalous grab samples and rocks for lithium. All of that is government database, and most of that mapping and samples would have been collected in the 80s and 90s when people were not looking for lithium. So the fact that these anomalies are there are very encouraging from an exploration standpoint. Also, all of these properties are within 200 kilometers of Deception Bay, which is an all-season port up through there. The yellow lines that you see on the screen are the roads coming down to the Raglan mine and the Nunavik nickel mine. So all our properties are within 200 kilometers of that port. And the lithium properties were also staked proximal to geologic boundaries, which is a favorable environment for lithium-bearing pegmatites to be in place. Go to the next one. This is zooming into the southern group of properties. As you see, Camp Chuckatat there in the red star. It's about 20 kilometers away from Kawat and a little further to Wire and Flare. Makes it really easy and efficient to get work done. So this camp is shared between all of our projects. So we operate the lithium, gold, and nickel from that camp. You can see some of the data which these properties were picked up on. So there's lithium rock anomalies up to 200 ppm on Flare, and then really high lake sediments anomalies. These are in the 98th percentile for Quebec, along with the Pathfinder elements that go with LCT pegmatites. From our recent news release on the right, you'll see some photos from some of the recent discoveries for lithium-anomalous pegmatites. These are from the southern group of properties. On the bottom photo, you may see some fluorescent green specks in that photo. That's a fluorescence under blacklight, which indicates the presence of lithium-bearing minerals. Also, we have a portable LIBS, which is a portable laser ablation device, which is also telling us that the pegmatites are anomalous. So we're pretty excited about that. We think that means we're in the right place and we have more exploration and delineation to do on these properties. Zooming in, this is the northern group of properties. So this is closest to Salouet. Again, we have those large geologic boundaries, which are favorable for pegmatite emplacement. High number of pegmatites and lithium anomalies in those mapped from the government on all of these properties. Essentially, when we picked up these properties, we picked up all of the anomalous pegmatites in Nunavik. Because we had the first mover advantage, and work is just starting on the northern group of properties this week. So we're pretty excited to see what turns up. This is one of the targeting approaches for target generation. So this is a zoom into the Radiant property. It's one of the largest ones. It's about 20 kilometers east-west and 8 kilometers north-south. This covers the heart of one of the strongest lakeset anomalies in lithium in Quebec. So to help us further target, we had completed a remote sensing study in June. So this is one of the products from that and is essentially using known lithium deposits and reclassifying satellite imagery to help generate targets. So we've generated over 50 high priority targets so far, and work has started to follow those up. And so far we're finding more pegmatites than was mapped by the government mapping. So that's encouraging. This is our West Raglan nickel project, so high-grade nickel, copper, PGE. Our property is shown in red. The green groups of rocks is the package that we're interested in. You can see a long trend is the Raglan mine. That's the north trend or the Raglan horizon. And to the south, you can see the Expo and Bélanger trend. As you continue those westward, West Raglan property covers both of those horizons. So it's prospective both for Raglan type mineralization and Canadian royalties type Expo and Bélanger trend mineralization. Grades observed on the property on the north trend are Raglan type grades. So there's lots of exploration to do there as well as on the south trend, which is virtually unexplored. So we're less than 80 kilometers from the Raglan mine, and we have about 50 kilometers of strike in this prospective group of package covering over 700 kilometers squared. And we have a partner on this. Wailu Metals is our partner for this project. We are doing exploration this summer. It is focused on the southern part of the property. So this points out some of the anomalies. Again, just recall the scale. It's about 50 kilometers east-west. The northern horizon or the Raglan horizon is that frontier to Equan trend, and there's Raglan type grades all through there, mainly in the frontier zone where there's been several high grade clusters of 2 to 3% nickel, a couple percent copper, and a couple grams platinum palladium. Historically, a lot of the work had been focused on that trend. There's still plenty of opportunity, and we generated lots of targets in 2022. The focus of the 2023 program was to go after the south trend, which is virtually unexplored. There are some anomalous grab samples with over 2% nickel on the south trend, and it had essentially little to no exploration and no modern geophysical survey. And of course, we're looking for nickel sulfides. So the first thing you want to do is a good EM survey. So on that basis, we can go to the next slide. So we just completed a approximately 2,000 line kilometer VTEM survey, tightly spaced with magnetics over the southern trend. The thick dashed lines mark the geological horizon that is interpreted to be the continuation of the Bélanger and Expo trends onto the West Raglan property. So the survey was focused around that. We'll be getting the results over the next couple of weeks of that survey and looking at targets for follow-up.
Before we go on to Kigavik, I just want to point out that we have the largest land position in the Nunavik region as far as claims in the immediate area of the Raglan Belt. So we are the biggest mining claim owners in that area. So because of our first mover advantage on the lithium claims and the fact that we've been there with a very large project for nickel and now gold, we have the largest property position in the area. So that's a huge advantage to us as far as that area goes. Now we're going to walk through the Kigavik project and our exciting work we're doing there this summer. Michelle?
So again, this is a camp scale property. It's 40 kilometers east-west and about 10 kilometers north-south. There's high-grade gold in multiple locations, up to 648 grams per ton, including visible gold in multiple showings. They have different mineralogical associations and different geologic settings, which leads to a camp scale potential and potential for more than one type of deposit and mineralization timing. The work this year will be focused on the Anik and Eric trend, which is in the central part of the property. And it's just because it's the highest density of high-grade boulders, where we have a lot of information, where we can drill high priority targets. So we had done some work over the last part of 2022 and 2023. And that was some quaternary geology with respect to gold grains and tills, and as well as a detailed structural interpretation with SRK, which leads us to believe that these are not actually boulder trends. They're actually a series of boulders overlying a proximal structure. So the 2023 work is focusing on further delineating those and testing those targets by mapping using geophysics, so induced polarization surveys, and using a RAB drill to test lots of shallow targets as we're chasing essentially boulders which come from surface. So this is an example of the Anik trend. So zooming into one of the orange squares or the red squares from the previous slide, it's about a 4-kilometer trend of high-grade boulders up to 648 grams per ton, trending about northeast, 20 degrees northeast. And along that trend, we also have really, really high gold grain counts and tills, so up to and over 400 grains. There's really large boulders. You can see on the left, there's a photo of the boulders. They're metric size. They contain gold-bearing minerals like galena, pyrite, and sphalerite. So zoom in on the picture of the right. So that's the kind of target we're chasing in gray, smoky quartz. And to help us do that, like I mentioned, we're using geophysics, but also the structural interpretation. So in the background of the image of the right, we see several timings in green and yellow for deformation. And we're looking where this possible Anik trend structure interacts with those other deformation periods. We're seeing clusters of boulders. So that's what we'll be testing in the drilling that's currently ongoing. And then once that's complete, we'll also go outside that trend to test other high priority targets. As I mentioned, there's VG and high grade gold in multiple places on the property. This is zooming back out. So the Anik trend was that red star in the central southern part of the property. And I've put red stars at other possible drilling locations. So these are locations where we have geophysics complete. We have some preliminary mapping done, and we have high grade boulders that we think are proximal and overlying structure. On the right, there's a picture of the drill we're using. It's highly portable. This is allowing us to test about one target a day. So one hole per day. We're doing 100-meter holes. We've already completed 1,150 meters of drilling over 17 days. As I mentioned, Kikavik has camp scale potential with the potential for multiple deposits. The discoveries are continuing to be made. You have to keep in mind that in total, there's been less than 12 months on the ground to date. And we have the best geological teams with lots of experience in the region. They've been working with us for several seasons on this property. And an example to the left is a new boulder sample from this year's program. It's again a new showing, so still discoveries to be made. They're large boulders, similar in some ways to the Anik trend ones. So we'll be looking at following up new showings like this as well and see if we can turn them into drill targets. And then on the right is a live shot of our drill on site on the Anik trend and an example of the chips that's produced from the drilling.
And if
Yep,
there are, go ahead,
ahead.
Michelle. Just go ahead. That's fine.
Yep, going into the Abitibi, this is another one of our projects. We recently completed an approximately 2,000 meter drilling program last February and March. We're in the heart of the Abitibi in the Joutel region along the south splay of the Casa Berardi structure. So this is just to give you some context of where we are. We have several properties, but the drilling program was on the Joutel Eagle one, which is on trend from the historic Eagle Telvel mine. These are the results from last season's drilling. So we have thick intervals of gold in JE004. There's almost there's high grade 28 grams per ton over 30 centimeters, but also included 4.1 grams per ton over 14 meters. In hole 5, 1.5 grams over 8 meters, and then some higher grade intersections. So we've tested a 400 meter strike. So we're getting thick, intercepts of gold. And our goal here would be to go back with another drill program over the next winter and continue to build that out into a resource. This is a long section, so you can see our holes in red sort of tested a shallow intercept across the strike of the deposit, so about 400 meters. So the next goal would be to continue to drill that at depth. Historically, there are some historical results on here, show that the mineralization continues at depth. So our goal would be to continue to test it at depth and build a resource. In addition, there was also a new discovery made this season in a parallel zone to the north. So we'd like to expand on that and possibly build some volume in a parallel zone.
I think one of the things that's really important to notice on this long section is the continuity of mineralization that we see at shallow depths, and then some of the historic holes where they didn't sample the whole core in the drill hole, just basically the sulfide parts, where there's still mineralization as you go to depth. So the potential for this mineralized body to get bigger and to have a meaningful resource is pretty good in our view. So when we go back in this year, we'll look to fill in that shallow area to see if we can get an open pittable resource. But we'll also look at potentially doing some deeper drilling to see what kind of extension the mineralization has. And there are some higher grade hits there that would be amenable to underground mining. So we're quite excited about this project. We think it could add value to the company fairly quickly. So just when you sum up Orford Mining, we have a large property position in the Nunavik region, exploring a brand new gold district at Kegavik with high grade gold across the surface of the project, and brand new interpretations as far as structural and quaternary geology, the superficial geology, to help us understand where that mineralization came from. So the drilling we're doing this summer is targeting those structures and that quaternary geology, the interpretation. And then you look at our West Raglan project partnership with Wyloo Metals. These guys are serious about nickel. They have deep pockets. This year is a target generation year, but we have no doubt that we'll come back for more drilling in the future on a project that has the potential to host another Raglan. And then we look at our brand new lithium projects. We've staked ground that's never been explored for anything before, has known pegmatites, great lithium anomalies already there from the government mapping and lake bottom sediment sampling. These are projects that are just wanting for exploration. We're all in an area where we're close to a deep sea port at Deception Bay and two critical minerals mines in both Raglan and the Nunavik nickel mine, already exporting nickel concentrates from not very far away from us. So we're in an area that's used to mining. It's got a big deep sea port that they keep open year round, and we have a lot of property to explore. So we're quite excited to be there. And then you look further south to our Jetel Eagle project, probably the project we can add value to the company the easiest and the quickest, because we're very close to getting a resource there. So I think moving forward in this next year, I think you got to watch the Jetel Eagle project and what we can add as far as resources there. And our northern projects, it's all about discovery. And so I think this will be an exciting summer. So you got to keep an eye on this space and what we'll be doing up there. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand it back to Romeo to see if there's any questions.
Thanks very much, David, Michelle. And just a reminder, especially to the small group that came in late, there's a chat box on the bottom right of your screen where you can submit questions at any time. But I'll run through a couple that we've already got in. One from James. He asked, are any spinouts coming? And then as a secondary question, how deep can the Rob drill go?
So first of all, on the spinout question, it's something we may consider at some point in time, but we have not brought that to the board to consider at this point in time. But it's definitely something that would be considered when it makes sense.
Great.
Yep. For the RAB drilling, we're set up to go 100 meters.
RAB drilling is all about testing near surface targets, because we're looking for the source of the boulders at Kegavik, and we're looking to test potentially some near surface pegmatites. So it's all about near surface drilling.
Great, thanks. Simon asks, how long until assays from lithium grab samples?
Yep, the turnaround time is about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on if we rush them or not.
Great, thanks. James wants to know, any newsletters coming, plus any funds coming in soon?
There are a couple newsletters who already follow us, the Calander Report, and there's a couple other smaller ones that cover us as well, so you can look online for those. I think we've posted some of those on our social media sites before.
Great, thanks. Kendall's looking really for your philosophy on financing exploration. He notes that adding value through the drill bit is number one, but to avoid dilution, which properties of Orford's would make sense to strategically extract value from?
Well, I think the first asset that we have that we could extract value from would be a couple royalties we own. We own 2 royalties in Colombia on fairly active silver projects, which are very high grade. One of them is owned by Outcrop Gold and Silver, and they just recently came out with a resource on that project. So those types of things would be the first thing to see if we can bring in some income that way to subsidize our financings.
Great, thanks. One question that was direct message to me from Lloyd. Are you anticipating any permitting issues at Jetel, and how long is the process there?
Currently, we don't expect any drilling permitting issues there. We're a long ways from putting a mine in, so those kind of permitting issues we haven't assessed yet. But as far as drilling, we don't anticipate permitting issues. Michelle, any other comments?
Nope, permitting is fairly straightforward and established with respect to drilling.
Thanks. Kendall from earlier had a follow-up question. He notes that since lithium is a hot commodity, maybe now is the time to sell lithium projects.
I think we would be remiss to our shareholders to sell those before we assess the value of them. So that's what we're doing this summer. Are we in the market to sell them? Not currently. If someone brings me an amazing offer, then we'll talk. But at this current time, no, we're not looking to sell them.
Thanks. Simon asks, how fast can the Rob drill be moved to lithium targets, and will you jump on those targets as soon as possible?
Michelle?
As soon as the decision is made to make that move to lithium, it can be done in half a day.
Great, thank you.
I think before we go on, that's the advantage we have in that area is that we have the camp. We've got an airstrip, we're already working in the area. So moving a drill to any specific property, whether it's nickel, gold, or lithium, is not a difficult thing. So the helicopters can bring that drill there almost instantaneously from when we make the decision. So I think this is something you need to remember. Our flexibility is huge in this area.
Appreciate it. Looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. Of course, if you're like me and you remember a question right after. Actually, one more from Simon. Is lithium or gold more of a target this year?
I think you have to... lithium is very exciting because the market is exciting for lithium, but it's early days on those projects. We just acquired those projects in in early February, and we're exploring them. It's the first pass of exploration, like I mentioned before. No one's ever walked on this ground before, except for government mappers. So it's very early days. However, the gold project, Kegavik, is much more advanced. So we're spending more money there. So I would say it's more of a target because we're more advanced there in drilling targets.
Great. Thanks, David and Michelle, for taking us through that presentation and Q&A session. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today, especially those who did submit questions. If you didn't get a chance to have your question answered, or if you think of one afterwards, please reach out to admin2@orfordmining.com to have your questions addressed as soon as possible. And for those who've requested meetings, you'll hear from us soon. But I'll hand it back to David for the final word.
Yeah, I wish to thank everyone for tuning in and hearing what we're doing up at Nunavik. I think it's a very exciting summer up there, our first summer exploring for lithium. A big drilling year for us at Kegavik. First time we've used a RAB drill there, and it's working out very well. We can test a lot of targets. So we're quite excited about what the results from this summer's programs are going to bring us, and we look forward to talking to you more about that in the coming weeks.